Desperate times calls for desperate measures. At Beijing Airport, children waiting to board a flight, their faces shielded with makeshift helmets. People in China are taking no risks, all too aware of the consequences of catching the deadly coronavirus. At this medical facility in Wuhan, the epicenter of the outbreak, the desperate wails of those working to save people last week speaks 1,000 words. This nurse repeats, "I can't take it anymore." This woman, in a video circulated last week too, begs to be seen. "Help, doctor, help," she screams. "I also have a fever." Both videos have since been taken down by censors. But
Shalom Yasharala. I want to give all praises to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, to the 144,000 elect, to the 1/3, to the men and women out there coming back to these lost statutes and commandments. So let's just get right into it. Make no mistake that we are living in the end days. These are the last days. This is it. Okay? As you can see here, the coronavirus has been declared a global emergency by the World Health Organization. So this thing is escalating. And they probably knew about this for a while, because whenever they report something, it's always worse, in the real world than it is on the mainstream media. But now they can't hide it because the numbers keep climbing. People are getting impatient, and the doctors can't even keep up with the treatments that they're giving these people in these quarantine facilities, right? So it was only a matter of time before this was going to become a global emergency. As a matter of fact, by the time they even were made aware that this was a thing, there were people already flying out of that city in all parts of the world. There were folks coming back to the US. There were folks going to Europe, other parts of Asia and Africa. So by the time this became an emergency, the rabbit was already out of the hat. So how do you contain this? Well, they can't, because the Lord is doing this, right? And this is not going to go away. Why? Because this has implications on almost everything. For instance, China exports a lot of products to the US. And with this coronavirus scare going on in that country, those companies aren't able to transport a lot of their goods over here, right? And on top of that, those production companies, those facilities, you can forget about it, because everybody is on a sort of a curfew in this lockdown, where everybody's being told to stay at their homes because they don't want this spreading any further, even though they can't stop it. But they're at least trying to keep it under wraps by staying at home. And by staying at home, that means no production. By no production, that means no goods. And if we have no goods, then the companies all the companies that do business with the Chinese are going to suffer, right? You know, in America, they say that time is money, right? So every day, every second that this virus is prevailing around the globe, money's being lost. So the economies of the world are shifting, and they're shifting like never before, right? It's only been a couple of weeks before this actually became a global scare, but now, you know, folks are really starting to get it now. And of course, you'll have, people who are still asleep. They think this is something that's, like every other scare, that's just going to be, talked about and forgotten within a week or 2 weeks. But what happens when the next time you go to the grocery store and you see that all the shelves in that grocery store are empty, right? Because a pestilence isn't just something that affects a person and an economy, right? A pestilence also leads to a famine. These people who are at their homes that are not working, they can't leave. So what happens when they run out of food, right? They're gonna run to the grocery store. So everybody's gonna be running to the grocery store at the same time to get food, just so that they can stay within that quarantine. So it's only a matter of time before the shelves are going to be empty, right? And what happens if you weren't one of those people who took heed in the first place and you're out of food? Then what are you gonna do? Then it's on to the next phase, right? So this is just like how it says in the scriptures in let's go get it. This is the book of 1 Thessalonians, chapter 5, verse 3. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Right? So, throughout the scriptures, when it's describing the end times, it compares it to a woman in travail, because before she's about to give birth, she goes through contractions. She has birth pains, right? Before the child is actually born, right? So what's going on right now are these contractions with all these things that are going on in the world, starting with this coronavirus, right? This thing is going to trickle up into something much bigger, right? So in this, don't look at it as if this is an isolated issue, because this is at our doorstep. It's already permeating throughout the earth, right? And it's not just China that we have business with. We also have business with India, right? We also have business, in Europe. So when it comes to automobile sales, a lot of IT companies, a lot of tech companies have a lot of influence from Asia and India over here in America, right? So everything is going to affect everything in these last days. So let's continue listening to a few more minutes of this video.
Fears about the outbreak have gone beyond China's borders. Officially, 170 people have now died from the virus. Almost 8,000 cases have been confirmed by officials, and they say 12,000 more are suspected.
There are only 68 cases overseas, which is less than 1% of the total cases globally. This means our measures to control the outflow of the virus are effective.
Under pressure this morning, the Foreign Secretary assured Britons in China they were trying to get them out.
We've been working tirelessly. The Foreign Office, working with the Department of Health, have been working flat out 24/7 to try and make sure that we can identify British nationals in Wuhan, get them to a muster point, and then get a charter flight in and out.
On the way to the airport for evacuation.
And after a false start yesterday, the evacuation is now underway. Since the outbreak, China is racing against time to build 2 new hospitals in Wuhan to meet the need caused by the virus. At the moment, hospitals are overwhelmed.
The whole city is under lockdown. The strain is on medical workers who have been working under pressure for nearly 3 weeks, and the number of patients is continuing to increase.
And it's not just in China where people are trapped. 6,000 passengers aboard this cruise liner in Italy are unable to leave as medics monitor a couple from China with a suspected case of coronavirus.
Sì, abbiamo parlato, la ragazza è molto agitata.
We spoke to my...
So like the Most High said, they shall not escape. So while they're trying to suppress this scare, they're coming up with things like comparing it to how many people are dying of the flu compared to the coronavirus. Well, don't nobody care about that, right? Because the flu is not causing, cruise ships to be quarantined. It's not causing whole cities to be quarantined. It's this coronavirus that's really shaking up things on the earth. So while they're trying to prevent people from going into a panic, it's almost like, but they're also contributing to the problem as well, because, they want to play the hero by going in and evacuating their own citizens, only to find out that when they get back to the United States, that somebody over there has it. So that puts everybody at risk, right? And they're not going to just let people leave the cruise ship, right? So they have to be there for an extended period of time. And the way this virus is working is that there's like a 14-day incubation period where you may or may not have any symptoms, right? And who knows how far this thing can travel in that amount of time, right? And if they just let one person from that ship out into the world or back into their respective countries, well, that's it. The rabbit's out of the hat. So there's no escaping this unless the Most High shows mercy, right? So let's go on to the next video.
Hello everyone, welcome to Eye on Africa. Here are your headlines on this Friday. The UN's Food and Agriculture Organization warns the current invasion of desert locusts in Eastern Africa could prove catastrophic for crops and food security in the region. Hundreds of billions of locusts have been wreaking havoc in several countries since November. As the Democratic Republic of Congo marks the one-year anniversary since the inauguration of Félix Tshisekedi, our correspondent in Kinshasa looks at the tensions that continue to hamper his presidency. And we head to Egypt to report on the dire humanitarian situation facing political activists in jail. Our correspondents in Cairo met with the family of one man who has been behind bars for 5 years. But first, experts at the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization say...
So meanwhile, all this stuff that is going on in Asia, there are things that are also going on in other parts of the world that don't even pertain to the coronavirus, such as this plague of locusts that's happening in East Africa, right? The land of the Hamites, right? So these locusts are taking over all these farms and they are just wreaking havoc. They're eating up all the crops, right? So as you can see, in this last part, they mentioned how this was going to have an effect on the presidency, right?
At the tensions, that continue to hamper his presidency.
Right. So tensions are rising within the presidency, because what happens is once these viruses, these plagues become a threat, then that puts pressure on the powers that be, right? And they don't have an answer. They don't know what to do, because this is of the Most High, right? They can only, take certain measures, but then it gets to a point where the people themselves, their trust in the governments, their trust in their leaders waxes cold, and they're going to start doing what they want to do, right? So that's also looming, and let's get a scripture on that. All right, so this is 2nd Ezra, chapter 15 and verse 11. But I will bring them with a mighty hand and a stretched out arm, and smite Egypt with plagues as before, and will destroy all the land thereof. Dropping down to verse 16. For there shall be sedition among men, evading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. See, so people are going to lose faith in the government, right? At first, everybody's calm. You know, the government's going to, you know, save them. The government's going to think of something, right? But what happens when this is like a month down the road, maybe 2 months down the road? People are going to wax cold. People are going to be waxing cold, right? They're not going to give a damn about what their plans are, because their lives are at stake, right? So they're not gonna care about what plan that the government has for them at a certain point, because their lives are at stake. Another scripture I wanted to bring out was Exodus 10:4. Else, if thou refuse to let my people go, behold, tomorrow I will bring the locusts into thy coast. So this is an ancient tactic, you know, that the Most High uses to take down nations, because it is something that they cannot control. They can't go to war with locusts. They can only go to war with men and subdue nations by subduing their kings and queens. But these locusts have no kings. They have no queens, right? The only thing they answer to is their own primal instincts. Like it says in Proverbs 30:27, the locusts have no king, yet they go forth, all of them, by bands. So they do what they want to do. It don't matter how many crops you got. If they're in town, they're coming to eat. And all you can do is watch it happen. All your hard work, right? All your hard work, all the tilling of the fields, all the money that was put in, all that is not going to save you, right? So this is becoming serious. And like I said, everything connects with everything, right? And all these things that are happening are converging. Like there's going to be a central point where all these things come together, right? And that's ultimately going to usher in the second coming of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. So let's go to the last video.
Today, the Caribbean was hit by one of the most powerful earthquakes on record in that region, magnitude 7.7. It was centered in the sea between Jamaica and Cuba, and it was felt 450 miles away in Miami. Manuel Bojorquez is there, and Manny, I understand you could feel the shaking.
That's right, and it is rare for Miami to feel the tremors from an earthquake, but this afternoon, some buildings here shook enough that hundreds of people emptied into the streets around town. Now, so far, there are no reports of injuries or damage here, but closer to the epicenter, which is between Cuba and Jamaica, videos appear to show where giant sinkholes opened up in the Cayman Islands. The earthquake struck just after 2 this afternoon, causing panic in areas where the jolt was much stronger. So far, no reports of widespread damage or injury there either, but there is concern about aftershocks, especially after just hours later, a 6.1 struck the area. Here in Miami, we watched as engineers fanned out across this area to inspect the buildings here. So far, no signs of any concern. Nora?
All right, Manny, thank you.
And there you have it. So there's the coronavirus going around. We got the locusts invading parts of East Africa, and then you got earthquakes that are happening throughout the world. And you know, this week it happened in the Caribbean, between Cuba and Jamaica, and you know, that's also an issue because some of these countries don't have the funding, they don't have the overhead to be able to address all these issues. So a lot of times they seek help from allies. They seek help from you know, other nations that they do business with, right? But with all these things happening at the same time, it's like there's no overhead for everybody to be able to help everybody. Eventually, everybody's going to be fending for themselves, right? This is the book of Matthew 24:7. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in diverse places, right? So when you're reading this scripture, it seems like, okay, you know, you should be looking for these things to happen in succession, but look what's happening. These things are happening at the same time. So it's no doubt, there should be no doubt in your mind that we are living in these last days, right? Jacob's trouble. All these things are about to happen soon, and it's not going to tarry. It's not going to tarry, because once it gets to that point where people realize that we are past a point of no return, all hell is going to break loose. All hell is going to break loose, right? But they're going to be freaking out. But the men of the Lord and the 1/3, the elect, you know, we're gonna be calm, right? Because we've been saying this. We've been saying this for the longest time. We've been expecting these things to happen for the longest time. So we're not going to be frightened by it, right? Let's get that scripture on that. This is the book of Isaiah, chapter 33 and verse 6. And wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of thy times, and strength of salvation. The fear of the Lord is his treasure. So we're not going to be worried about this, right? Because we're going to be keeping the commandments, and we're going to be keeping the faith and hope that we get beamed up during this time, right? Or whatever we have to go through, that we go through it, but the Lord got us, right? Because he is our treasure, right? Salvation is our treasure, our strength, and our knowledge and this wisdom. All of that is our treasure in these times. Everybody's going to be acting carnal during these times, right? They're going to be doing things that might get them caught up in these last days. But if you have the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of the Most High, then you're going to be stable in those days, right? So that's all I wanted to get into. I mean, these things are just stacking on top of each other, right? Like, this is like, the Lord is not playing around. So it's high time to come back to the Lord and get right. All right. So with that, I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Avakar Kadash, Shalom.